A violent confrontation erupts in a crowded market square when a feared warrior known as the Butcher appears. Though he brutally fights off attackers with lethal efficiency, he pauses mid-chaos to rescue a small girl from being trampled by the panicking crowd, gently tying her shoe and comforting her before disappearing when authorities arrive. By morning, the town's rumors paint him only as a monster, ignoring his act of mercy. No one mentions the girl he saved. Elira, a perceptive healer examining the scene, recognizes that the violence was controlled and defensive, not mindless slaughter. She notices significant details others miss. The warrior observes from hiding as his dark reputation spreads. He didn't want to return to this place, but was drawn back by a grim discovery. Bodies bearing the same symbol used by the cult that murdered his family years ago. Killers he thought he'd destroyed. The script closes ominously as children begin disappearing from the town, suggesting the true threat isn't the butcher, but something far darker that has returned alongside him. Central tension. A man branded as a monster may be the only one capable of stopping the real evil haunting the town. The first scream tore through the market square like a blade through silk. It was the kind of scream that made time stop, the kind that turned laughter into silence and warmth into ice. Around the square, lanterns swayed in trembling hands. Vendors froze mid-sentence. Children clutched their parents' sleeves. Then came the sound of breaking bones. Wet, heavy, unmistakable. A man's body flew backward through Master Chen's fruit stall, snapping the wooden beams like they were nothing more than dry twigs. He hit the cobblestones with a sound that would haunt the witnesses for years to come. For one heartbeat, the entire square held its breath. Then chaos erupted. People screamed and scattered like startled birds. Stalls crashed over, spilling their contents across the blood-slicked stones. A basket of red apples tumbled free, rolling through the carnage in a grotesque mockery of normality. Everywhere, phones rose into the air, modern witnesses to ancient violence. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Too far, too late, and at the center of it all stood a single figure. He was tall, powerfully built, wrapped in a dark coat that moved around him like living shadow. His fists were painted red, not splattered, but coated. His breathing was steady, controlled, terrifyingly calm. Another attacker charged from the left. The warrior moved with brutal efficiency, one step forward, one devastating strike. The crack of impact echoed off the surrounding buildings like thunder. The attacker crumpled without a sound. "It's him!" someone shrieked from the crowd. "The butcher!" another voice confirmed. "Run!" The crowd fractured in every direction at once, a human flood seeking any escape. Then, beneath the chaos, a small sound emerged. A child's cry, thin, fragile, almost lost in the screaming. The warrior's head snapped around. Through the smoke of overturned oil lanterns and the surge of panicking bodies, he saw her. No more than 6 years old, frozen beside a collapsed stall, a small wooden doll clutched in her trembling hands. Her eyes were wide with terror. She tried to run. She stumbled, and the stampede of fleeing townspeople rushed straight toward her like a tidal wave. The warrior didn't think, didn't hesitate. In 3 powerful strides, he crossed the square. He dropped to one knee and swept the child into his arms, just as a terrified man fell exactly where she had been standing moments before. The warrior spun, placing his broad back to the stampede, and became a wall of flesh and bone as people slammed into him and flowed past like water around stone. He didn't move, didn't flinch. When the last of the crowd had passed, he gently set the girl down. Her small shoe had come loose in the chaos, still breathing hard, still streaked with blood that wasn't his own. The warrior knelt in the debris and tied her shoelace with slow, careful fingers. He picked up the fallen doll and placed it back in her hands. His thumb, rough and scarred, brushed a streak of dirt from her cheek. "Don't run where you can't see," he said quietly, his voice surprisingly gentle. The girl stared at him with wide, uncomprehending eyes, too afraid to speak, too young to understand what she was really looking at. Then new voices erupted from the square's entrance. "There he is! It's the butcher! Surround him!" The warrior stood in one fluid motion, By the time the town guard burst into the square with weapons drawn and orders echoing off the stone walls, there was nothing left of him but scattered footprints and ash spiraling up from overturned lamps. The little girl stood alone in the center of the devastation, still clutching her doll, still staring at the spot where her savior had vanished into shadow. The man everyone called a monster had just saved her life, and no one would ever know. By morning, the story had already changed. Stories have a way of doing that, twisting in the dark, growing teeth and claws, becoming something unrecognizable from what actually happened. Some said he started the fight. Some said he killed 5 men. No, 7. No, a dozen. Some said the blood coating his hands was proof of his guilt. No one mentioned the girl. Fear had found its voice in the town, and it spoke louder than truth ever could. The name they whispered was old, ancient, carried on the same breath as warnings and bedtime threats. They called him the Butcher. Elira heard the name as she scrubbed blood from the stones. She had arrived with the other healers after the square had emptied, after the wounded had been carried to the hospital and the dead had been counted in hushed, shaking voices. She was smaller than the other medics, wrapped in simple linen robes, her gray-streaked hair pinned severely back from sharp eyes that missed nothing. She knelt beside the dark stains and frowned. This wasn't slaughter. This was control. She followed the pattern of violence backward from where the warrior had stood, the marks where bodies had crashed into him like waves against a cliff. The spacing of the blows, each one deliberate, precise, never wasteful. Each strike had been calculated to disable, not to kill. Only 2 had died. In a crowd this size with this much panic, only 2 deaths was remarkable. She measured the distance to where witnesses said the child had been found. Then she noted where that child now was. Vanished, taken by her frightened parents before questions could be asked. That bothered Elira most of all, because if someone had saved that girl's life, the town deserved to know. But truth, she had learned long ago, was always the first casualty of fear. By noon, the crowd had transformed into a jury. No trial, no evidence, no chance for defense. Only fear stacked upon fear until it hardened into something that felt like truth. The townspeople gathered in clusters, their voices rising and falling like storm waves. "He hunts the violent," one merchant insisted, arms crossed. "He's a vigilante, a killer with a code." "He enjoys it," a woman swore, her face pale. "You should have seen his eyes, cold, dead, like a shark." "Maybe he's cleansing the town," a younger man whispered, and there was something almost like reverence in his voice, "taking out the criminals that the law can't touch." "Or maybe," an elder said darkly, "he's just a monster with good timing." And threaded through every version, every telling, every fearful whisper, was the same conclusion. The monster had returned. The butcher walked among them once more, and blood would follow wherever he went. The warrior watched from the rooftops as his name spread through the streets like poison. He had not wanted to come back. For 5 years he had stayed away. 5 years of silence. 5 years of trying to become someone else. Someone clean. But the mark had returned first. 3 weeks ago, on the wind-scraped edge of the southern ridge, he had found a body. A young woman, not much older than 20, left in the rocks like discarded trash. But it wasn't the murder that had frozen his blood. It was the symbol. Carved into her flesh with ritualistic precision was a broken triangle. 3 lines that almost connected, but didn't quite. The same mark that had been branded into his nightmares for a decade. The same symbol the cult had used. The same ones who had butchered his family in front of his eyes when he was just 14 years old. The same killers he had hunted across 3 provinces, through 4 brutal years, until he had put every single one of them in the ground. Or so he had thought. The warrior's hands clenched on the roof tiles. The butcher wasn't back because he chose violence. The butcher was back because the violence had never truly died. It had only been waiting. That night, little Marcus Chen disappeared from his bedroom. His window was open. His bed was empty. His mother's screams woke half the neighborhood. By morning, 2 more children were gone. By sunset, the count had risen to 4, and the town stopped arguing about whether the monster existed. They only argued about which door it would knock on next, which child would be taken, which family would wake to find an empty bed and an open window. The butcher's name was on everyone's lips now, but for the first time, some began to wonder. 4 children vanished in a single day, and the butcher had been seen nowhere near any of them. Elira stood in the square as the sun set, watching parents clutch their children close, watching fear turn neighbors into strangers. She looked down at the stones she had cleaned that morning, at the spot where a little girl had been saved by a monster, and she wondered if perhaps the town was hunting the wrong beast. Somewhere in the shadows, the warrior watched the same sunset. 4 children, the broken triangle, the cult he thought he'd destroyed. The truth was becoming clear, sharp as a blade. He wasn't the monster they should fear. He was the only thing standing between them and the real darkness. And whether they believed it or not, whether they thanked him or hunted him, he would do what he had always done. He would fight, because some debts can only be paid in blood. And the butcher's ledger was far from balanced. Sit tight and watch out for episode 2.